ready to talk hockey. Streaming from the Oilers Live studio. Subscribe or follow today.
Hey, everybody. It's Michael here from Oilers Live podcast for Oilers Live Thursday. No hockey, no problems. That's what we're going with today. Hey, Mike. Welcome.
Hello.
How's it going?
Not too bad. How are you?
Good. So we are officially at that point in the podcast where we're running out of hockey things to talk about. In fact, I think I've seen every Rewind game that they've aired. I've watched. We're gonna have to start talking about Dusty's play-by-plays there and everything going on with that.
Yeah, I didn't catch much of that tonight. Just the overtime, and the Oilers took the loss, and series is tied 1-1. Back to Dallas.
Back to Dallas. Hey,
Virtual Dallas.
That's scary. Scary stuff. What's it at? So you said, 1-1. Is it?
Yeah.
That's kind of exciting.
Yeah.
So what about your day? Your day was good today?
Yeah. Still kind of on these little bit shortened days. So normally my days are 8 to 4:30. Now they're 9 to 3. So goes by pretty quick. It's like I didn't even work. So
Yeah. Well, that's nothing new for you, right?
right.
I mean, yeah, that's right. Yeah. So we, I think everything's been pretty decent here. We do have a little bit of hockey to talk about, and that's specifically the news today that was on Stauffer. I don't know if you heard, but Burke was suggesting that there's a possibility of them hosting a 8-team playoff. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that'll make Toronto Maple Leafs fans real happy if they.
Well, we'd be out too, right? Because we're in ninth, sitting in ninth, apparently.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess that would take the Oilers out of the equation. I guess the flip to that is if they're not in the playoffs, do the remaining teams all get into the lottery for first pick?
Right.
And the way it sits right now, they haven't indicated that that's going to be the case at all. I would imagine that there's too many challenges with that kind of a setup for that to actually happen. It could be way off there, but your thoughts? You think they could do an 8-team? I guess the benefit to that would be they could possibly be close to starting the season on time.
I heard another angle on it that instead of that route, they would go first 3 rounds of the playoffs being a best of 5, and then Stanley Cup being a best of 7.
Yeah, I kind of, I think that's what I'd like to see if they're going to do. I'm in the camp that would love to see playoffs, and I think it's selfish because I want to see the Oilers in the playoffs, and it's been. Granted, it's only been a couple of years this time, but it's really been we're starved for playoffs in Edmonton. But I'm definitely in that camp that I'd love to see playoff hockey. I'd love to see any hockey. They could start playing exhibition games, and I'd be happy to see that. But I would love to see some hockey. I'd love to see the Oilers in it. If they play best of 5, I think they should bring back the old rules. I mean, we've been watching all these NHL rewinds. They should. They're already hooking and holding on Connor anyway, so bring back the old rules. Let's have some fun. Let's see. Cassian would love it. I think Cassian would be all over that. Yeah.
Nurse would probably enjoy it on the back end too, being able to cross check at will and
absolutely.
Darian Hatcher it up.
Yeah. Well, we had a little conversation on Twitter about Hatcher the other night. I mean, those that was the deal, right? It was it was a different game, different rules, different game, and the playoffs. I mean, the other thing that when we're watching these old rewind games that we have to remember is they're playoffs, right? And the whistles legitimately went away in the playoffs. Some of that they wouldn't get away with in regular season. I mean, they got away with a lot in regular season, but it wasn't quite as bad as what we're looking at. What is your thought now? You've seen. I mean, what have you seen? Have you watched like a number of rewind games, classic games?
Yeah, a fair amount. Like some of the '06 stuff was on. The '97 Todd Marchant goal. I think they've showed about 3 times now, and
Yeah, yeah.
it
Nothing wrong
seems
with
like
that.
the '80s Oilers, they're keying in on the Oilers Flyers series and running that almost every week. And
They showed a game, Detroit and Toronto, from I can't remember what year. It was in the playoffs, first round, or maybe it was conference finals. Detroit ended up winning the game like 6 or 7-3. Doug Gilmour was on the Leafs. The Eiserman was out there. Fedorov. Who else was on it? Krushelnyski. Anderson was playing for the Leafs, which was pretty cool. You remember Pupa?
right,
He was in net. Um,
Darren.
yeah. Who else was? Paul Coffey was playing on Detroit. I mean, it's fascinating to see just how those Oilers from the glory years ended up, around the league, and were in every major game and every, like they were everywhere. Like when they left Edmonton, they were successful. They had successful careers outside Edmonton, right? No matter.
It's
Yeah.
it's kind of amazing to me that in 1994 the Edmonton Oilers, like most people don't know this, but in '94 the Oilers actually made the Stanley Cup. They just played their home games in New York.
That's right. That's right.
If you look at
Yeah.
that Ranger team, man, it's half of it's Oilers.
Yeah, it was Oilers East. There's no doubt. There was Spectre had had a article on Sportsnet yesterday or today. It was about the Flyers series and how they went into. Keenan would put the Stanley Cup. Back then, the teams actually had, there was no Pritchard, no keeper of the cup, and the teams had the. You should go and read the article if you haven't yet. And anyway, the teams would have the cup and they'd take it uh, to each arena. And the Oilers were transporting the cup back to Philadelphia for Game 7. And the Oilers actually hid the cup because the prior 2 games, the Flyers had taken a cup, put it in the middle of the dressing room. Keenan did, wouldn't let anybody touch it, but it was inspiration and it got them back into the series. And so that Game 7, the Oilers actually hid the cup, and they asked, "Oh, I'm going to get the player wrong now. I think it was Hextall. They asked Hextall who was the keeper of the. He said we actually did have a keeper of the cup back in those days. It was the Edmonton Oilers, and I love that. I love that line. And like love or hate Spectre because he can be a polarizing figure. The guy's been around, a lot of the Oilers, and he wrote that Battle of Alberta book, and certainly understands some of that history, and I enjoy a good Spectre read on some of those types of events, and he's a good storyteller, and that's kind of what got him where he was, but. Love the Hextall thing. Stats guy
I
Bob's
think
listening. He says 8 ex Oilers on that '94 Ranger team. That's crazy.
yeah, I think with Spectre, some people don't like him because he he writes articles for Sportsnet and has to write sometimes you know where he rips an Oiler to shred, and then he'll praise the Flames if the Oilers played that Flames that night. But he'll do the same thing to Calgary. Like I don't think he really has a. Honestly, I think he actually has a bit of more of a fan side to him for the Edmonton Oilers than he does for the Calgary Flames. You can't blame him.
Yeah, no,
But
100%. I mean, there's got to be a bad guy in every, and we had this conversation when Brendan Escott was here. There's got to be a bad guy to write something, and Spectre does that well. I will tell you this: they have that character in every city, and we've got Spectre. It could be worse. We could have Eric Francis. right? Like, you know, I mean, that's the Calgary equivalent to Mark Spector's Eric Francis, and I
Oh
can't
man.
think of a. I'm actually usually quite fair when it comes to media types. I've known a lot of them. I've just talked a lot with a lot of different folks. Some of them, in that Spectre type of role. But that's the one guy that I don't know. Like I've never seen anybody that writes so pro owner that it just can't be. I can't explain it half the time. I don't get it.
You don't see too many Flames fans that'll even jump to the guy's aid. That's how you know you know
Yeah, he is
he is
like
who he is.
in the weasel category. There's no doubt about it. Yeah. I guess, I mean, it's just surprising. He's made a career out of it. Good on him, I guess, right? He doesn't care could give a shit what we think, I bet.
There
Yeah.
must be a decent amount of blackmail material or something. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, he's always writing pro owner type of material in Calgary. When it came time for the arena to be built, I mean, it was clear which side he stood on, right? Like anytime something comes up with the owners, it's clear which side he stands on. I think that the ownership in Calgary gives him a call if they want to, talk some crap about a player in the news, right? Like if they want, something. I firmly believe that. I think that they say, hey, Eric, like could you give this guy a little bit of a run, right? Like we want him to kind of up his game, and that's what's going on in the background there. The difference there on the Spectre side is I just don't think that Spectre would do that. I think Spectre's, um, he's gonna be, as honest as Spectre is, whether you agree with him or not.
So you think he's a little bit more principled, do you?
Well, yeah, I mean, who knows for sure? We don't know these guys. We don't hang around with them. We don't know them. He does do. He does do a lot of charity work. I will give him that.
I've noticed with Spectre, if Stauffer or anybody says something that he doesn't agree with, he's not afraid to call somebody out.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I respect him a little bit for that. I'm not really high on Mark Spector. I see him as a little bit of the weasel, like you mentioned,
yeah,
but
yeah. Fair enough.
he's not all out weasel though. There is a a little bit of a human side to the guy. So I certainly don't hate him, and he's I guess for Edmonton media he's a little bit brash, but if you read the papers in on the East Coast in like Boston and Toronto, he's a cream puff compared to those guys. Those guys are ruthless. Like yeah.
Well, it's interesting. We had I'll give a little shout out to Sam the Brit. They're talking about how we've had really good response from local Edmonton media, and I've said this to them, not meant to pump their tires, but I truly believe this, that Oilers media is among the best in the league. We've got some really great sports media, right? And we've only had a handful of those folks, on the show.
Yeah.
But it was interesting to hear Sam suggest that in the UK that the local media, they wouldn't be caught on a show like this. A fan show or anything like that. So,
Right.
and I think, and I don't think there's anybody locally that I've asked that has turned me down outright. And so, there's been some of them that I haven't been able to schedule as of yet. Just
Yeah.
trying to find the time. I mean, this is their job, right? This is what they get paid to do, and then for them to give, another hour or whatever to do it again, and they're not getting hundreds of viewers if they come on our show by any stretch. It means something, that they give that effort.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think we've got a you know, a good group of media members that sort of understand too, like the fan base a little bit. So it helps sort of their brand, I guess you'd call it in a sense, to do that, and I appreciate it. I know you do. So
Oh yeah, 100%, 100%. I think it's great. I think we're pretty lucky. Bob says not yet, and we're probably on a delay, so I'm not sure what the not yet is, Bob. But I missed. Oh man, I tell you, I really though. I like the one thing that I want to know. We're talking about, talk about hockey is like, when is all of this gonna, that's the only thing that I really care about. Like, is not outside of outside of hockey. There's lots that I care about, but it relates to hockey. The one thing I care about is the timing of everything that might possibly happen. And Bob says on the hundreds of listeners. That's what he was talking about. We're getting there. Yeah, listener at a time. I used to joke, by the way, and before I'll go back to the timing of hockey. I used to joke when I started the podcast that and I actually there's always some truth to a jest, as they say. I thought that I would have 4 or 5 listeners right off the start, and they'd all be related to me. And then by episode 2, they would have all
you might have
said,
6 or 8.
"Yeah, yeah." So I'm lucky that I have had hundreds of listeners on occasion, and we've done quite well. It's done. I'm hoping to get, I'm hoping to grow as people interact and we have some fun. I think it just gets to be a little bit more fun, and you have people that call in and it's the original intention around this, as Mike knows, was that, which is also kind of goes against having too many media folks on here. But the original intention was to have fans podcast. In fact, in the logo that I had created, it says a podcast with fans, and it wasn't meant to say, "Hey, I've got fans." It was meant to say a podcast with fans doing the podcast. And so, it's great that we've had Bob on, that we get Brett Luchansky and Chad and folks that like you and I, that aren't media types, right? That can just go. Bob says we need more goalie content. That'll bring him in. Yeah,
Probably what scared them away, really.
yeah, scare him away.
Ruin our momentum,
Yeah. Oh man, I tell you. Yeah. So anyway, and this is prime reason why I'm not doing mainstream media, because I can't hold a thought long enough to do that. Back to timing. I really, yeah, like when it comes to hockey, one of the things that is really just driving me nuts is I want to know when, right? Like, they're talking about this first phase that have they decided that the players can come back and train together? That's been decided, right? And is
I,
that right away?
now you're gonna make me look that up because I don't think that's actually been confirmed yet.
Okay. Well, look it up, or Bob Stats guy can tell us. Um, I think that I guess the big question still remains, right? That if they do come back and life is not back to normal, obviously they're not coming back with 20,000 fans in the stadium, right? In the
No.
arena. So are you all right with empty arenas? What's your thought?
Um, I mean, yeah. Am I all right with it? Yeah, I mean, I can watch. It's definitely different, and maybe we need simulated crowd noise to make it feel like a normal NHL game, or simulated fans almost in a real game on the ice. Um, it's definitely different. I think it'd be hard, like a major adjustment for players. I mean, they can do it. I mean, we all grew up playing road hockey on the street, and not too many other mom and dads came to watch. So, you
Yeah.
know, we we sort of know what it's like.
Give Connor a taste of our medicine, right?
That's right. That's right.
This is what it's like to play rec. Yeah.
Yeah. Just
Bob says no statement issued yet, by the way.
yeah, I
Yeah.
didn't think there was, but like, every jurisdiction or province and state has sort of different timelines on, when they're allowing things to really happen. And I think, what is it, May 15th in Alberta, we go to a different phase of this whole thing. And then they gauge it from there, how we're doing. So I don't, if they're allowed to get going again, I don't think it'll be in front of fans right away. Maybe in the fall, but
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I mean, do they? Does it really matter if you've got 5,000 fans or 20,000 fans? Is the next question, right? It's. I don't think that. I can only imagine what entering Rogers Place would be like, and trying to keep social distance in
yeah.
those in those big long lineups would be
Well,
next to crazy.
just go back a few years. Imagine if it was in Rexall.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. You can't. I mean, you could barely fit two aside going down those hallways,
Yeah,
right? Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Stay 6 feet apart. You're hugging the wall on the one side and the bleachers on the other.
That's awesome. I I was I was I was at the last game there, and I wish I had gone to the first game at Rogers Place, because the first time that I went and I went and watched a game at Rogers Place was pretty exciting. Um, and then it was the first half of the Battle of Alberta, and then I went from there to the Saddle Dome for the second half of it, and you like I would have loved to get that contrast when Rexall was open, right? Like to go watch a game at Rogers Place and then go watch a game at Rexall, like almost back to back, because that's what it was. It was like that same. I'm trying to remember. It was the year Rogers Place opened up, and I think that the Oilers and the Flames played almost back to back, like within a couple of days of each other. And I remember walking back into the Saddle Dome and just like,
Back to the Future, really.
yeah, like unbelievable. Like if you haven't, if you don't have that contrast and that immediate contrast, you don't realize. Like, I've been around both arenas. I've been around Rexall as well, obviously a lot. But I mean, there are so many things that, like, I've been up into the media area, overlooking the ice at the Saddle Dome, and it just doesn't even feel safe, right? Like it's the scoreboard, because of the way they created the roof in that dome shape. The scoreboard is actually hollow, and it's one of only a couple in the league that are hollow. You can see right through it because it can't bear the full weight of a regular scoreboard. What I, here's here I'm gonna let you buzz in, because we're gonna see if you or Bob gets this first. And Bob's on a delay, so Bob's watching with a 2-second delay. So
Good.
if
I
he
need a head
beats
start.
you, you even can look it up. What city was it where the scoreboard fell down?
Cool. Didn't something like that happen in the Maritimes?
No, it was an NHL,
NHL venue.
right at a I believe it was right after a practice.
I'm gonna say New Jersey.
Uh, it was. I'm giving Bob a second here to respond.
Okay, before you spoil it.
Yeah, yeah, it wasn't New Jersey, by the way. No, Bob's too late. Bob's role as stats guy is not
Dwindled.
looking so good. It was the Buffalo Sabres.
Okay.
in 96. I'm going to look it up right now. But in 1996, it crashed onto the ice before a game between the Sabres and Bruins, and the game was postponed. I played. I had a very well, not so similar, but Bob's finally buzzed in with Buffalo. Bob, disappointed. We've got. I played. I used to play every couple times a night at this rink in Calgary in a league that I was playing in, and I play in a few different leagues, but it was one that I was playing in. I played on a Sunday night, and the very next night, the roof collapsed, like the whole roof. They've torn it down, but we played the night before. It was it was an old barn. Like you couldn't. You couldn't, as a defenseman, flip the puck up because it would hit the ceiling, right? Like I had to duck just to play hockey there, and
that's normal for you, though.
yeah, that's pretty normal. But Bob says unfair time delay. Hey, man, it's a dog eat dog world in this live streaming business.
The excuse came pretty quick.
yeah, that's right. The excuse was quicker than Buffalo. Oh man. I think we got Luchansky listening in as well.
I saw that. Yeah.
Without Luchansky and without Bob, we might not have anybody. There's people on Facebook and on
That's
YouTube.
still your family reunion here, isn't it?
Oh yeah, yeah. The family quit listening a long time ago. They were the first people to drop off the listen train
to get paid to listen in. So
that's right. That's right. And there's a way that people can listen in, and they do on the they can listen in on Twitter without actually logging in. So I don't know if I'll never know if they're actually watching or not. They're lurkers. So to all you lurkers out there, because I know you're there, thanks for tuning in
and lurking.
Yeah. Did you catch a picture of my do today? I had the spiky hair going.
I think I did. Yeah.
It was looking good. I got the COVID styles going on.
Yeah.
My hair was a mess today. Did a little bit of a circuit training thing. Got finished working out, and looked in the mirror, and that's what was looking back at me, and so I couldn't help but take a picture. And it feels lately like somebody different looking back at me every day. Every single day. It's just getting
a few more weeks of this, and I'm going to have my grade 10, like Ryan Smith level mullet where my hair's down here. So
hair salons are opening on the 14th.
Yeah.
I did book, I booked a haircut. I booked the first one, actually. In fact, I figured my best chance of getting out of this without catching coronavirus would be if I was the first one in, right? Then I wouldn't have to deal with everybody else that was saw my hairstylist. So the moment that I saw that, I texted my stylist and said, I'd like to book an appointment for the 14th. And she got back to me right away. She said, "You're the first." And so that'll be awesome. Be in, be out. And I'm not sure I'm going to look any better, but I'll definitely feel better. I'll feel much better about myself. The confidence will exude on the live stream, Mike. There will be
I heard you tried to get conched in the other day too.
I did try to get conched in for the 6:00 thing. What's the guy's name? Lieutenant Eric? Is that?
Yeah, Lieutenant Eric. Yeah.
What is he, the producer of the show?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. See, I'm never up at 6:00, so I'm not. I think I've seen him tweet out before. Anyway, Lieutenant Eric responded back because I said something about Stripes Luchansky. And he said he just responded thinking that I was making some movie reference to the movie Stripes, which, by the way, I haven't seen. Bob's favorite movie, Bob the goalie's favorite movie, not mine. I've not seen it, But now I feel like I should, and make some next time I'm up at 6 a.m. to get conched in. I will have to make a Stripes a Stripes reference, a legitimate one. A legitimate one. I thought maybe with the Luchansky, I thought Luchansky was a big media star. And so I figured if I just mentioned his name, that at the very least, that would get me conched in, but it didn't get me anywhere.
I think he goes by Surveyor Brett all the time, so I think that's probably how Lieutenant Eric knows him.
Oh man, we need to change. You need to change your name to Stripes Luchansky.
That's right.
That's what we call you here, Stripes Luchansky. Uh, Brett's mom listens to the show, by the way, and now I've started listening, going back and listening to see if like I'm swearing or doing anything like that. Like
Sharpen up.
I kind of feel like Brett's become a friend, right? Like we've talked to him. I feel like we talk to him all the time. And Bob makes a good point. He says it's never wise to name drop the zebra. So true. So true. But you start to get to know somebody, and it's like, maybe one day we'll be hanging out with Brett, and we'll meet his mom, and she'll grab you by the ear and say, and wash your mouth out with soap or something, right? Like that's not cool. I'm not the big swearing type though, so I don't have the
There's
same.
that, or maybe she'll teach us how to be a little bit more colorful with it, like some people.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. She could give us a couple lessons on what's your outside of the Oilers Live podcast, radio, otherwise, other stuff. What's your favorite podcast out there? Let's start with your favorite fan podcast outside of this one. if that was even on the, I'm just glad you didn't quickly say something else. I had to qualify it first.
Well, I think you know what my day starts. Sometimes I'm a 6 o'clocker, but I can't say that I am every day. So, but I'll catch like I usually always make sure that I tune in to 1260 at 8:30 to hear the Rashog report, and now he's doing civilian Rashog, and that basically means Ryan Rashog is playing a song on his guitar, and
geez.
he's actually
not
good.
Bad. Yeah, he's a talented guy.
Yeah, I catch that, and then I used to catch Alan Mitchell Low Tide.
Yeah. Well, so that's regularly. Local media. Are there any on your podcast subscriptions? Are there any podcasts that or hockey related? Don't even need to be Oilers related. I mean, one that I never miss is 31 Thoughts. If we're not talking.
Yeah. I mean, Friedman. I try to listen to what he has to say, but you know what? I catch a lot of that through Stauffer show too, because he has them on.
Yep.
Once every week. So I kind of tune into that, but just out and out, sort of everyday people. Our friend Eric Friesen. I listen to Eric when I can. A little bit of Sam's new one that he's going.
Yeah.
More Oiler guys content. A little bit of the Cult of Hockey guys when I can. I'm not, I probably shouldn't say this, but I'm not religiously, subscribed to them or anything. But just when I can catch them, I do. I like Bruce McCurdy.
Good guy.
I don't really care about people's politics that much. That doesn't make me write them off as a person. So, as sometimes Staples I think can rub people the wrong way. Whatever he says politically doesn't really bother me. So, I don't mind him as a hockey person. So,
I make a point of not reading anything he doesn't write about hockey. And that's not. To be honest, I have no idea what his political leanings are, but I know they're controversial sometimes, and so I just don't read it because I don't. You know what? I could care less, and that's not a slight to Staples, but I could care less what he thinks. And frankly, that's what columnists are about. They're opinion writers. they're supposed to write opinions, and that's what he does. And I'm just, I've got my own opinions. I don't need to,
Yeah.
read those ones.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think those are fair. Of course, and Eric, I almost have to listen to Eric Friesen's podcast because I put them together and I publish them and throw on the Oilerslive theme song at the end. If you ever get there, you get to listen to that, and I do that. Plus, I like Eric. I've known him since I started doing this. I will tune in, once in a while to the Cult of Hockey. Not that often, to be fair. I've probably listened to them maybe a half dozen times. And part of it's they just, an every game podcast to me is a little bit more than I can consume, and so then I find that I just, I turn the notification off on new episodes, and so I just never see them, right? Whereas like when I listen to podcasts, the ones that I, are sort of evenly spaced that I can get a chance to listen to, I'll have a notification. I used to listen to Spit and Chicklets. Now I'm really selective because I found that the first like half hour of Spit and Chicklets was always about Biz Nasty's wrench, right? Like that seemed to be the topic of conversation was, all of his conquests and everything that in his
Right.
career. So I kind of, some guys love that. To me, it was, I wanted to listen to hockey, and so I got tired of fast forwarding through. I know you don't fast forward anymore, but skipping to the part where they do the interviews. But I will listen to when they do the interviews. I mean, those guys are, Biz Nasty is probably one of the most connected guys in hockey now, right? Like he is. He's made an empire of this podcasting game, and so he gets amazing guests, right? He's connected. They want to be on his show. He had Connor and Draisaitl in one of the few episodes anywhere where I felt Connor seemed a little bit more human than I've ever heard him. And so, they do a good job when it comes to the interview pieces, and those guys, they know hockey, they love hockey, they've played, so they can relate to the players. I love that. That's good.
This is going to be hard for me to admit, but I actually listened to the, what do they call it? It was Kessler and Bieksa.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Something in juice. I
yeah,
forget
Kess
what
and
the
Juice
nickname is.
or something.
Yeah, that might be it. And
I only listened to
Cassian
the
on after
Cassian
the Kachuk thing.
one. Yeah.
And I listened to that episode, and it was kind of good. Like, I don't mind Kevin Bieksa, honestly. I hated him as a player because he was, hard nosed and borderline dirty,
yeah.
and that, and he was an honest kind of player, but a little more on the dirty side.
Yeah.
But I can listen to him as a broadcaster. I still can't stomach Kessler, but
Kessler. I will tell you 100 times out of 100 times that I hate those players if they're not on the Oilers. But if they're an Oilers player, I would do anything to have them on my team. Like Otto, right? Like would have loved to have Otto on my team. Or Kessler, like to have him on the Oilers. Bieksa to have him on the Oilers, right? Like I just those are guys that especially in a league like the NHL, right? That is, that's you need whatever advantage you can get, and if they provide you that advantage, like Kachuk, he won that game where Cassian flipped out. That was Kachuk's game.
Yeah.
Right? And my hat's off to him. He answered the bell when it came time. In fact, he never stopped fighting after that. Now I think he had a half dozen fights after that. It was really weird.
Yeah.
Maybe he realized that getting hit when you're on skates isn't all that bad. But I like those guys.
I look at Bieksa like almost like Vancouver's version of Jason Smith.
When we had Rafi Torres, did you hate him?
Did I hate him? No,
When we
no.
had Marchment,
I thought he was a little bit off the. I thought he was a little hyper aggressive, almost like a Jordan Tutu, and I knew that a player like him would probably get suspended on occasion, right?
Bob says the only Oiler I could never get behind was Shane Corson. I just couldn't cheer for him. There's a lot of fans that would agree on that one. Um, yeah, what about Pronger? I mean, Pronger is a good example of a guy that walked the line on some of the shit that he did was unbelievable, right? Like,
There's a lot of people that absolutely loved Pronger when he was here.
yeah,
I didn't fall into that camp, but I'm glad we had him.
yeah, and that's what I mean. Like, I think that when you've got a player like that, and the reason we're talking about these guys is talking about that podcast. When they're off the ice, quite typically these are great guys. Like, you know, this pains me because it's Kachuk, but Kachuk is everything you hear about Kachuk off the ice is he's a hell of a kid, right? Like he is. He's into the charity. He's out there. He'll talk to fans. He'll do all of these things. And I am going to strike this from the recording. But
It's
he's an ass on the ice, and I love to hate him. Like I love to hate him. Would I want him on my team? 110%, I would want him on my team in a heartbeat. Is he as good as Flames fans think he is? Well, maybe not, but he's still a damn good player, and I'd love to have him on the team. Uh, but that's these guys like Kessler, same thing. I can think of a number of players in that sort of realm that I loved were hated to watch because of what they did. Tikkanen was that way. Tikkanen, by the way, did you? He's hilarious now. Like he's like a big
always
big
was.
dog, and he's funny, man.
With Kachuk, it's almost like he's in character when he puts on that ugly red
Yeah, he's
jersey.
so much like his dad, right? Like the three of them together.
I think even more so. It's like he's a WWE character when he puts on that jersey.
Don't get me wrong. Like I get who the guy is. I hate him though. I do. I hate him as a player. I do think he's dirty, and I think he crosses the line sometimes. But that's the NHL. You know what? Like we've had that. Here's a question for you. After watching all of these games, these review games that we've seen, all these NHL classics, Paul Coffey was on 31 Thoughts. And Bob, I'll get to your comment right away. Paul Coffey was on 31 Thoughts and said he thinks there needs to be more hitting in the game. Do you think we've gone too far one way, or do you like where the game's at now?
I think there's still opportunity for hits to happen, and guys shy away from it, and I don't know if it's because it's coached that they have to be, so positionally responsible, or what the reason is, but yeah, I agree with Coffee. I mean, there's games where, you know, the stat sheet might read a little different, but you're hard pressed to see 5 body checks in a game.
Yeah. So, so you think like, why do you think that is? Do you think it's a rules thing? Do you think it's a players thing? Do you think the players are soft now, or do you think they're because to be truthful, I'd have a tough time calling any NHL player soft. I mean, these guys, I think they'd get out there and they'd play. And if you're a small town farm boy, as you know really well, having grown up and played in that, you're not gonna.
Yeah.
You could give a shit, right? Like you
I think
just give me the puck, give me give me a twig, give me a puck, and let's get out there and play some hockey, right? And
I
I'll
think
play by the rules that are there, right?
I think it's a combination of a lot of things. Honestly, I think it's a little bit of a sort of a load management NBA kind of term built into the like. It's not like their guys are intentionally sitting out a hockey game, but if you don't make it too physical, it's kind of like you took a night off and your body isn't taking that wear and tear.
The
Whereas
playoffs,
if
though,
you're
playoffs can be pretty brutal.
for sure, for
Yeah.
sure, and I think that's kind of the whole rationale is that you're playing an 82 game regular season, and then you have
Yeah.
in April usually that war of attrition that can last 2 months.
So you think there's
So
too many games?
I think it's a bit of maybe you're not in that one game gonna ratchet up a physical tone, to a junior B or senior hockey level, because you've got to play the next night or two nights down the road, and you've got that long sort of marathon to get into the playoffs and then the playoffs, and I think guys know that now. I think each individual game is not usually as intense as they used to be.
Yeah.
But we saw, in that Battle of Alberta this season, those games, the physicality started to, come back. But then, you go away from, the big Battle of Alberta game against Calgary, and you play like a Winnipeg or LA that's, buried in the standings, and you as an Edmonton Oiler don't want to play a physical game against them because you're higher in the standings. You don't want to wake them up.
Yeah.
I think that happens.
Yeah. I wish somebody had woken up Lucic. We who's the toughest team in the league right now?
In terms of fisticuffs or just playing
Who's
a physical
tough?
style?
Yeah, who's
or
tough? Like who's the toughest? I mean, I think like if I think about teams that play right now, I like Boston. I think is a pretty big. Like they're a tough team. Like they get in there, they grind. Love or hate Marchand, right? Like he's one of those guys that he plays dirty physical game. And then of course you got Chara, who, yeah, just a behemoth.
they're not as big. They're not as big and hulking as they used to be, but it's still kind of a scratch claw, you
Yeah.
know, physical brand of hockey that they play. I think Washington Capitals probably fall into that kind of game that where it's kind of a long night and grinding.
Who's the
Um,
softest team? I wonder. I don't even have an answer for this. I'm just pushing that out there. Bob does say so. Bob, we'll get to
Toronto.
yeah, Toronto might be in there. The first team that came to mind was Arizona, and I don't know if I'm just. But anyway, we'll get back to that. Bob said Theo Fleury as an Oiler would have been cool. He hated him, but he would have been good to have on the team. Agree, 100%. And then this is relevant to what we're talking about right now. Imagine the quality and intensity of hockey you'd get if you had a 65 game season. That's the NFL, right? Like take a week off in between games, right? Recharge, get ready, go all
Yeah.
out, right? Like that's the NFL. I mean, we don't have stadiums for hockey, although we're getting to that point with, it seems, 20 different outdoor games every year. But that's the NFL model, right? Like, just play a game a week and come out and play as hard as you can, right?
Yeah, I think, two different games. The NFL, I mean,
Well,
pretty much on every
obviously,
play you're getting hit. Um, and I don't know. At times, I think it's easier to get away from a collision on the ice than it is, on the ground in football. But yeah, if you scale back the games, then I think you would ratchet up the intensity and a more physical brand of hockey could be played. But I like I was before, there's those things are going on, but also the rules have changed. We've gotten rid of the red line. We've gotten rid of a little, on most nights anyways, the ability to really slow down an offensive player with the sticks and the holding and all that. So the speed is higher. So it might be harder to actually line somebody up now than it ever was, and hit them. And I think you don't see as much. I shouldn't say it doesn't happen because that would be a lie, but you don't see as much as of the really bad kind of suicide passes And a lot of times suicide passes, end up in a head collision, and we've taken out, hits to the head. So I think that's played a factor too.
Yeah, Oscar on Twitter says 60 game home and away would be a brilliant scramble to get over the playoff line. Yeah, I 100%. So here's the thing: is I love hockey right now. Like I love watching hockey. I love the Oilers play. I love watching Connor McDavid. There's rarely a game that goes by where he doesn't do something amazing. Uh, I don't know what the answer is, right? Like there's if you go back to more hitting, it slows the game down. And for years, that's what we were talking about. Fans want to see goals, 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 right?
Right.
And I mean it seems that the Bob the goalie, I love this. The goalies union has really like they're the only ones other than when they went to the new padding the other like was it this year or last year? They
The
haven't
shrunk is
made
down, yeah.
yeah, they haven't made really any changes to that. I think shit, like give them the horsehair padding again, right? Like give them the heavier padding. You want to increase the scoring, and then maybe bring a little bit of hitting back into the game if you want. But I think that the challenge and there's that balance, right? Is like you watch these classic games and they hooked and held everybody and it was you watch that we talked about that Lemieux goal on Monday on the stream like him he didn't like he had everybody like hooking and holding him. It was unbelievable. um I just think Bob's quick to say the trapezoid was a change for the goalies too.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there have been goalie changes, Bob. I'm not, I'll give you that, but I think that some of that has to be like when we're talking. We just talked about size of goalies too on Monday. The goalies take up half the net, right, or 75% of the net. You certainly have to be a better shot now. The pucks, though, I guess like the sticks are better, the shots are better. There's a lot of things the players have done. I just think the reality is if we get more hitting, does it slow the game down? Maybe it does. That's why we took the red line out. If you take the red line out, they're flying through that zone. If they take a suey, which we've seen, right? It's a little bit more brutal than it was before, right? If you
Higher
know,
speed.
yeah, it's higher speed. Like, and I think the guys are faster too. Like, I've been watching these classic games. Like I'm not sure that the fastest of the fastest back then is the same speed as a Connor McDavid or
No, no.
and that's not about
No.
athleticism. It's about a lot to do with
Training.
equipment and training and all these other things. I just think there's a lot of different factors that play into that. I love the game right now. I'm not, I'm sure I love a good hit, and but I still love the fact. I do like that they put the whistles away a little bit in the playoffs, right? And it's a grind. Like when you watch a team win the Stanley Cup, I will argue this, and if to the end of the earth, like there is not a playoffs in the world in any pro sport that is as grueling a run as the Stanley Cup playoffs. This is a season of do or die, right? Like it is a full season. You can play 28 games, right, which is more than an NFL season, and and that to me is still exciting hockey, right? Like that is, it's great hockey. A lot of people tune out when their team's out. Not me. I love watching. I could watch. I pretty much watch every game that unless if they overlap, right? I'll find a new team. I don't cheer for the Canadian team. That's not my style. But Bob does
And
say he is against big goalie equipment.
and you know what? For me, the best, and I agree with you. Any any league that has an 82 game regular season, and it takes 16 wins to win the Stanley Cup, that playoff's the most grueling of any professional sport. I think football, they have a 16 game regular season and then a few rounds to get to the Super Bowl, and then a one shot deal. I mean, that's grueling and it's different, but yeah, no, hockey far and away is I think just the most grueling to get there. Um, and for me personally, the first round of the Stanley Cup playoffs is easily my favorite. They get into that, and you can watch 4 games every other night, or sorry, yeah, every night. There's 4 games that go on in the first round, and it's just a war.
No,
The
it's
hate
unreal.
level by game 2 is through the roof. The first game is usually just run, 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 and then by the end of the third period they hate them, and the second game's even better. And as it goes on, I think the hockey sort of goes down a little bit. And by the time you're in the Stanley Cup, if you've got anything left and you play reasonably smart hockey, you'll probably win the Stanley Cup, because everybody's beat to hell by the time they get there. That's kind of
No,
the way
it is
the way it
grueling.
goes.
Like, I don't know how some of these guys do it. And then you hear, after the fact, I mean, it's legendary how many of them played with broken bones or,
Right.
some type of affliction. It's
Yeah.
great. If I could ask a favor of everybody that's listening tonight, if you could just go onto my Twitter profile and hit retweet. Let's get we got another hour left. Retweet the stream, go onto Facebook, share it, YouTube, share that, whatever it is, whatever stream. Let's get some people on and listening, and let's get some activity here on the chat. Although I will say, Bob, thank you for being there and spurring that up. We did have Oscar and Brett on there as well. Yeah, and let's just talk some hockey. We can.
Yeah.
This is a good conversation to have, because this is well, it's just unique times for us, right? Like, it's we will never have this moment where they'll be playing NHL rewinds or NHL classics
I
again.
hope
Like,
not.
yeah, well, so do I. I mean, I shouldn't say never, but it's certainly a unique time. I said early on when this happened, it was, I would never go back, or unlikely to go back to watch some of this. Like, I started on Boys on the Bus. I'm gonna get through it, but I haven't watched that for years. I don't even remember it anymore, right? Like, and I'm not through it yet, but I'm gonna get through it. And maybe we'd do an episode on Boys on the Bus, and
It's a matter
yeah.
of pride.
And there you go. You can, if everybody starts to tune in, they can listen to Mike do some singing.
Moment in time karaoke. Yeah.
Oh man,
Great song.
yeah, yeah. I mean, that's like, this is fantastic. Like, to go back, and even for we always make fun of Brett and how young he is. But for some of these kids that didn't grow up when the Oilers were winning Stanley Cups, right? Like, to see some of these, if they're tuning in to watch some of these NHL rewinds and get an idea for and like, some of the contrasts are phenomenal. Like, watching these games, there's nobody in the stands wearing jerseys, right? Like, they
Yeah.
just they weren't wearing
Back in the
jerseys.
80s, it was suits and ties. Yeah.
Or they're at the Bob says if it becomes a karaoke pod, he's out. Uh, the other aspect to that is, like, you watch, like, the old Maple Leaf Gardens, that game with Detroit and Toronto. Like, the fans could just reach over and start jerseying a guy there. It was
Glass
phenomenal.
was this high.
I know, it was awesome, right? Like, that just couldn't happen now because there's so many idiots out there, right? Like, at a game or whatever. I mean, I'm surprised that, I mean, of course they had fights between the fans and players. I'd say, I'm not going to say all the time, but it happened more than it probably should have. But still, considering like the proximity of players to fans, you'd think it would have happened more.
You bring
You
this
know,
up, and last Saturday I did catch a little bit. I think it was Game 6 in Philadelphia, Oilers and Flyers in the Stanley Cup there, and Anderson gets a penalty, and Coffey's already in the penalty box, and Andy goes and sits beside him, and yeah, the glass, like they're both looking over it, like it's barely, up to their neck, and the gate guy. He's in a suit and he's got a Jofa bucket on with a full face shield. He's got a better helmet than Anderson did. But
oh
I just
no.
laughed at it. Oh man, different times.
Yeah, actually I remember that now. Yeah, the Jofa. Who all wore the Jofa? Klima, right? Was it Klima that, or what was Klima's helmet?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Klima
Klima.
had the one that went back really far and then angled back in,
Yeah.
and Messier at times wore like the just the little. Actually, no, he was usually wearing a Winwell helmet. Yari and Wayne. McSorley, I think when he was in L.A. or a Jofa, I can't remember his
Lemieux.
Edmonton years.
Lemieux and Yager both had a Jofa, but they had the rounded one. You remember
I
the?
thought Mario wore like a helmet like Messier, like a one of those Winwell
I remember when he
rounded.
wore that rounded, when Mario wore that rounded Jofa. It was
Okay.
yeah, it was like a black, very round. The one that Klima wore was really boxy, kind of looked like a Fisher
Yeah.
Price helmet,
Mm-hmm.
right?
And
Uh,
funny angle at the back. And
yeah. It was weird. Um, some of the like, I mean, if you ever had a look at some of those helmets, we talk about Mac T sort of holding out without the helmet. Some of those helmets, there was really no point, right? Like it was,
those Jofas, yeah.
yeah, it was like a little, it was like Fisher Price plastic and a little bit on the inside, um, you know. But I guess if you're going to
Fisher Price approved instead of CSA.
Oh, Oscar says they used to get a few fan/player discussions in quotes in British hockey, especially local rival games. So, like Oscar, would that be like hockey hooligans? I guess maybe. I guess, yeah. And there's some. I've heard that kind of goes to another thing. I've heard if you're in Philly, that can be a pretty brutal place to go as a opposing fan.
Right.
But like as a Oilers fan, I've been to a number of different places around the league and watch the Oilers. I usually get a good reception wherever you are. But it also is nice to be an Oilers fan at a different arena because there's lots of us. Oh, Oscar says no, just mad players waiting in. That's awesome. So the players getting into it. I think that's so. I get down these hockey rabbit holes, and just as you can tell. I mean, I'm all over the place. We do about 20 different topics when you and I get chatting, and they quite often run on to something different. But today I was in this somebody on Twitter that writes and does some media for the Tulsa Oilers of the ECHL. And so I went onto the Tulsa Oilers page and started looking at, this team in the ECHL. There is a fellow on the Tulsa Oilers that is 31 years old, has never played a game in the NHL. I'm going to ask you this because we always joke and we always talk about being paid to play hockey, like and you say you'd take $5. They're not taking much more than $5 in the ACHL. Like they're not, they're living on the poverty line. Would you do that? Would you play till you were 31? This kid, not kid anymore, this guy played in the NCAA for 4 years. I've got to think he's got a degree. He's played in the ECHL now for 4 or 5 years at least. I'm not even going to say who it is, but till he's 31. So, question for you and anybody listening, feel free to chime in on the chat. Would you play in the ECHL until you were 31 in Tulsa, Oklahoma?
Yeah.
By the way, it
other
was Oklahoma City where that guard got shot for not letting somebody into a store without a mask.
with my knowledge of Oklahoma being sort of in Tornado Alley, that would be
That
the
too.
one drawback for me. But I know those ECHL guys um, because I listened to Reed Wilkins' show the one night, and he had a guy that was basically sort of the same thing, a career ECHL player, and they usually find you accommodations, and so that's sort of looked after.
Yeah, but I
And
mean, the
I think
point is not
I think
what
I
you.
think you get a little bit of an allowance,
Yeah, I think you get like
when it comes
$400 or $500 a month. To be honest with you,
when it
it's not
comes
a
to
lot.
food. But
Yeah,
yeah, if you're trying to get rich, you're not going to do it being in the ECHL. A lot of the guys, in the off season, and even I think during the season, when they're on a break, like they'll run hockey camps and stuff like that just to kind of make ends meet. Um, yeah, I mean, if I could make my current salary doing what I do, playing hockey, would I do it? Yeah, yeah, I'd do
you won't though playing in the ECHL. You won't make what you're making today in the ECHL.
From what I heard, it would be almost the same. Like, this guy was kind of on a almost like a teacher's salary, not quite like a high end teacher, but
Like I think that here. So I'm just doing a quick. They have a salary cap of $11,200 per week for a maximum of 20 players. The average salary per player is $560 per week, with the range generally being between $400 to $800. That's in 2007, so it's probably raised a little bit. But I wouldn't say a lot. We're probably talking about $2,500 to $3,000 a month now. Let's say that. So a $30,000 a year salary with accommodation. So I guess you could bank that.
although
It's not a lot of money.
the one thing, Mike, I would have to factor into that is the ECHL isn't exactly a league where you can just kind of go about your business and lay low. I mean, usually it's a little bit more physical than a Sunday at the park.
Well, and so you know what? Bob's got a Bob. Call in. You can call in 587-907-5483. Bob's got a story about a lifer he knows that played too long and why he did it. And so that's my question to you though. Would you do it? Would you play until you were you know what? I'm not judging this guy. I wouldn't do it. Right? Like not till I was 31 if I was just going to be in the ECHL. I'd go and play senior hockey in Rosetown, Saskatchewan, right? Like
Well, I
I
mean,
would
if you were
go
playing
play
in
in
Horse Lake,
Kindersley,
you had an opportunity
right?
to make six figures
Well,
playing
exactly,
senior
right?
hockey
Yeah.
there the one year.
Like I I would do something like that. It's just not to me. Like I'm thinking like this guy, 31 years old. He's got 4 years in the NCAA, so he's got some education right behind him. Who knows if he finished or completed his degree? Goes straight to playing in the minor leagues, and you know what? I would do it till I was 25, 26, no doubt, right? Like I would guarantee I'd if I had the opportunity, I'd go play minor leagues, go have some fun, go travel. Like the ECHL is a legit league, right? Like it's
Yeah.
and it's good hockey, right? Like we don't think of it too much because we've got NHL in our backyard, but the ECHL, those are good players, and some of them will eventually come up and play NHL
Yeah.
hockey at some point. But at 31,
If you've
your
been down there
ship has
for about
sailed,
8 years,
right?
like he probably has, it's probably safe to say that ship has sailed. So
Yeah, absolutely. So at that point, and maybe it's a thing where it's just hard to know when to quit, right? We got Bob.
could
We
be
got
that. I
Bob
mean,
here.
but if he does have a degree, there's nothing saying he isn't using it in the off season too. So
Yeah, that's
depending on
fair.
what it is.
In Tulsa, the big thriving metropolis of Tulsa. Hey, Bob.
Hey guys, great talk today. Good discussion today. Loving it.
Thanks. Thank you, sir. So you've got a story about a guy that played in quotes too long. Is this guy you know, or just something you've heard?
No, I know him. We're not friends. I know his family more than him, but I have had two discussions with him, and one of them was after he was done playing. Gave me a real insight of the mindset, and I think actually if I had been 3/4 as good as him, this probably would have been my story. I could definitely relate to what he went through. He played some minor college, I think some Div 3 kind of stuff.
Yep.
And then got then played minor pro. As high as he got was the East Coast Hockey League. He played a few years on East Coast Hockey League. He quickly knew that his chances of making the NHL were not going to be there. It didn't seem like he was going to get the break, or even that he had the skill for it, for that matter. But he loved the game, and he loved to be in a goalie, and that was his passion in life. And he had the same mindset as I had, like when I went for my first tryouts, where I would have been like, "There's a potential for them to pay me to play. I mean, I would pay them to play professional hockey." That was. It's like a dream come true.
Well, and that's one of the things that I was talking about, right? Like I get that. Like there's a part of me that I would take $10 to play, right? Because I pay today. I pay to play as much as I do. Well, which is nothing right now, but I'm happy to pay thousands of dollars to play hockey every year, and it has become a thousands of dollars hobby for me every year. Not just that doesn't even factor into podcast about it, right? Like this is a pricey hobby for me, and so I've made the discussion before, and I laugh about it, that Jason Strudwick, who I was in an English class with in high school, he gets paid to broadcast, and he gets paid to play, and he got paid to play, right? Like I pay to do those things, and I'm happy to do them, but being on an ECHL team, even though you're getting paid, you're still getting shit from the coach. I guarantee it. You're still having to show up to practices. You're still having to abide by curfew. You still have to ride, like you're riding bus, right? You're not getting the private charter, right? You're riding the bus, and you're 31 years old. You're running out of time to make a career for yourself. So sorry to interrupt, but yeah, I'm with you. I would love to get a few dollars to play some hockey. Nobody's offered to pay me yet. I'm waiting for that big contract.
And that's how it starts,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And when you're young, and like even in your early 20s, I mean, that's to you. Yeah, you're getting paid to play regardless what the amount is. Like it's just a dream come true. It makes the practices, it makes the bus rides, it makes the workouts, it makes it all worthwhile because you're chasing your dream, or you're actually living a part of your dream. And a small humble brag here, I got paid to play senior hockey, and that was and that to me was like, well, this is as good as it gets. I'm getting paid to play hockey.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
But
yeah.
Put that aside. We're not going to make this the goalie Bob worship hour. We can do that another podcast.
Yeah, we will. We'll have one of those. We'll have a whole night set aside. It won't even be a Monday or a Thursday. We'll like do the special live stream on a Wednesday.
But he got bounced around after a while, and as time went on, like he got married, he had kids, but he was playing all these like Texas Pro League, Central Hockey League, like he's thrown around all over the place. A season there, 2 seasons here. The most he ever got paid for a year was $45,000 to play hockey.
Yeah.
And that's below average of what I think what the average person makes nowadays in any kind of occupation. So he ended up retiring at the age of 35.
Jeez.
And he with bad knees, with no work experience except for hockey. He had I want to say 3 kids, 2 kids for sure I know of, and now he was starting over at the age of 35, and he confessed to me. He says, I played too long. I have minimal time now to make a career out of anything else, to make a decent living for my family. We've been living on breadcrumbs because they've been, you're moving all the time, year to year, every 2 years.
You're basically a band guy, right? Like you're a local bar band kind of guy when you're doing that, right? Like that's your life, right? Like it's fun to go and do some riffs on the guitar in the local bar, but it's not going to pay the bills when you're 50, right?
It's not just that. I honestly think it's almost like an addiction, and that's what he referred it to, because he's like, I could not say no to hockey. This is my biggest passion in life. I could not get away from the competition. He did not see himself ever playing like industrial beer league hockey. He needed to be able to play as high as he can for as long as he can. It fed his appetite for it. But he admitted he played too long because his life professionally is like he's got to start over now. I honestly think if I had 75% of that talent, I would have been that guy. I totally understood where he was coming from. Hockey was an addiction to me, especially as a goalie, and I think I would have been that guy who would have willingly sat through those bus rides and those practices and stuff just to be able to play as high as I could for as long as I could.
So those kind of leagues, like are the ECHL and some of those other leagues, it's a different brand of hockey too. It to keep people in the stands and to get more people to come, it just becomes really, really physical, right? And to do that till you're 35, I mean,
it's unreal.
In
my mind, if I'm playing at that level, I'd try to find my way onto a European league, right? Like one of the lower div leagues in Europe somewhere. Make a trip out of it,
but see,
right?
But that's where it comes now. So now he had 2 kids. Are you going to pack your whole family up, go over to Europe now, and have the kids join schools over in another language and what have you?
Screw the kids.
There's so many there's so many different variables. I think he did say that he had looked into some sort of European hockey at some point, but the feasibility behind it. Plus, like, you're making $40,000 to $45,000 a year. Have you even saved enough to make an overnight trip to for a tryout over in Europe?
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah,
good point.
What have you? So
so Mike, you still haven't answered the
totally
question.
What he was saying.
Mike, would you play? Would you play till you were 31 in the ECHL with a degree, likely a degree, and knowing you're not going to make the NHL?
Yeah, I mean, that's tough. There is an addiction to it. I mean, when I get on the ice,
that says yes or no, Mike. Come on.
Yeah, well, that's kind of where I feel the most free.
There's no politics on this show.
I think I think I'd have a higher survival rate in an NHL game than I would an ECHL game, because unlike you, I wasn't a fighter. So I've got 2 career fights under my belt. So. And one was a draw and one was a win, so I did okay. But I don't think I was cut out to be an ECHL hockey player. You can't, really. I'm probably best if I'm a left winger. I don't think you can survive being a left winger in the ECHL if you're not dropping the gloves, every 3 or 4 nights at least.
Okay,
fair
enough. So that's the long way to say it. There's no way.
Yeah.
There's no way.
I talked myself out of it.
And Bob, you're on the fence a little bit. You're thinking if you had the talent to do it, you'd probably do it till you're 31. But you would realize at 35 the error in your ways, much like your friend.
Yeah, I think so. Like, I was fortunate enough to have a couple of East Coast Hockey League tryouts and actually played in an exhibition game once too. And to me, that is the NHL. I never had a realistic expectation of playing in the NHL, so this was as close as I'd ever get. So I definitely felt the addiction of, we had 12,000 people out to watch this exhibition game, and it was like the noise, the atmosphere, the crowd, like it was an ultimate high. And I'm like, man, I could totally do this every day. I knew I had no chance to make that team, but to play an exhibition game, you had that, man, I'd give anything to be able to play for at least a season here. And I can totally relate to that addiction because I got it on senior hockey. It took me a long time to be able to say no to senior hockey.
Well, there are two guys on this. So I brought it up. There are two guys on this Tulsa team that guy that I'm talking about that is 31. He was seven. He's in his 7th year in the ECHL, and there's a defenseman on there in his 10th year who is 32 years old. Like that's unbelievable. Who knows where they are in life and what they're doing. Maybe they've got these great jobs during the off season. It's a grind, right? Like anybody who's played any high level of hockey understands that, as soon as that coach is in place and there's something, around the games and people care about whether you win or lose, it's a grind, right? And I just can't.
Yeah, but that's part of the grind you like, though. That's the pressure. I like the pressure.
And
I like
part
the
of the
coach.
grind, there's a part of the grind that even you two probably aren't even, maybe Bob is, but the guy that phoned into Reed's show, he played in North Dakota, I think, in the ECHL team in North Dakota. And they played a game almost on the Mexican border and drove back to North Dakota. They got within like an hour of where their home is, and the bus broke down. And it took longer for them to get that extra hour than it did to get back from Mexico. Like, it's just totally different. I mean, you probably rode better buses if you played junior B or midget hockey here in Alberta.
Well, fair enough. Fair enough. You could. I've heard some. Speaking of that, I've heard some horror stories from some of the teams in the KHL that didn't pay their players. Like, guys that I remember listening to. I think it was Brule. On one of the programs talking about like some of the stories that would come out of there, specifically around North Americans going and playing in the KHL and basically wasting a year of their life without getting paid to play. And then, of course, we know some of the tragic stories around, the plane crash and that, and some of the conditions that these guys played under. But you got I guess the part that is just, to me though, is there's that grind. Like there's the requirement for the practices and the coach. You're right, Bob. I think that some people thrive on that, but it's you don't have full access over your life if you're playing for a competitive team like that. Like there is it's not like you're just allowed to go and do whatever. Once the season starts, there's a certain element of being a team
you talk
player.
About these guys. You talk about those guys that have been playing for 10 years for Tulsa, what have you. Like guy was 32, played 10 years in that league. So he's been doing this since he was 22. This is all he knows. So this is maybe the structure, the only structure he knows in his life. And maybe this is the structure he needs in his life. You hear of guys, this is obviously 180-degree comparison, but guys that are in jail, they get out, they find a way to get back in jail because they need that structure. They need that's all they know in life. And I guarantee you these guys are 10 years playing for Tulsa, what have you. They're not even doing it for the money. They're doing it for other reasons.
Yeah, I mean, they can't at that point. I just, you hope that there's something for these guys when the league is, when they're too old for the league, right? Like, you're not going to have a lot of guys. I don't even know what the rule is in the ECHL. I think there used to be a certain amount of, like, you could only have so many veteran players on your team, right? I think that's still the case. Like, I think you can only have one or two.
I'm not aware of that rule.
Yeah, there's. I'm fairly certain that, like, after, it might be. Let's look this up. You're supposed to be the guy. Then.
I'm on the phone.
You walked yourself into this one.
I'm on the phone with my agent, see if they can get me a job in Tulsa.
That's right. That's right. I'm pretty much at a loss here now without Bob the stats guy listening in and giving me the words here. Okay, I'm going to look it up. You two take control of this topic here right now while I look up age restrictions in the ECHL. I'm putting myself on mute. Okay, you guys are up.
Holy crap!
Don't ruin the podcast.
So
Well, we can't.
Yeah, it's already
We
gone
can't because
down as low as it goes.
Brett's mom is listening.
That's right.
So
Yeah, Brett's mom now is
you
listening.
you did a preseason game in the ECHL. Other than that, have you ever watched any ECHL? Like, I've never seen an ECHL game. I just know it's physical and what it's known for, really. But
I did after that because I had a taste of it. I got so close, so I was like, I instantly became a Peoria Rivermen fan because that's who I had my tryouts with. So I think that season, for the most part, I watched as many games as I get my hands on online. And yeah, there's quite a few brawls, but I think the hockey is very underrated. Like there used to be a time when they were basically considered a sideways, half a step behind the AHL, and then of course the AHL eventually they just made the AHL the better league. And so it used to be much more comparable. There are some great hockey players in the East Coast Hockey League, but there's definitely that goon element that's pretty prevalent as well. Like
So
in
would
our
you say-
exhibition game,
sorry, would you say
There was-
two steps up from like a Western Hockey League game kind of thing?
that's a good comparison. You could take the best Western Hockey League team and play against the worst East Coast Hockey League team, and I think the East Coast Hockey League team might win. It's so different when you go from boys to men, right?
Right.
So some
Stronger,
18-year-old guy
faster.
hitting a 35-year-old guy out there. It's just like when I played for the A's a couple seasons, we played against the Storm in exhibition games.
Yeah.
And the Storm were a middle of the pack team back then. And when I was with the A's, we were a shit team. And we beat those guys both years because it's totally different for 18-year-old guy to hit a 30-year-old guy. And
Right,
plus,
nothing
the
happens.
veterans, they know how to slow the game down, right? They know how to see the game, slow the game down. Like these young guys, they couldn't use their speed as much because, the guys were keeping the puck away from them. So.
Yeah.
Okay, so
I don't know how many steps
Pass
it
them
would be,
into the
but-
ground.
how do I do the stats thing
Yeah,
here,
exactly.
Bob? Am I supposed to do it in the chat? Yeah. Damn, they gave the
Well, the
stats guy a
chat has a terrible
microphone.
time delay.
Yeah, they gave the stats guy a microphone. You're in trouble now. There is, in fact, so I was right. This should have been a trivia question for me. It's not an age limit as such, but it is a veteran limit. So each ECHL team is limited to 4 veteran players, excluding goaltenders on its active roster and reserve during the season. And so a veteran player is any player other than a goaltender who has played in at least 260 regular season games of professional hockey. So I assume that would be, any number of leagues. And any player signed to an NHL or AHL contract which contains an ECHL assignment provision shall be exempt from that rule. So I guess if you were sent down, you're exempt. So the other, although if they have a member team on an NHL or AHL contract, shall be deemed to be a veteran player if the player is 24 years or older and has participated in 260 regular season professional hockey games. So that's the answer. So I knew that there was some. It's not necessarily age related, but at the same time, to play 260 professional hockey games, that's age related. That's a pretty good career, if you think about it. 260 professional hockey games, no matter who you are, right? To be a veteran at any level, that's a pretty good. In fact,
All in all, it was irrelevant to my career.
Yeah. Well, this guy that I was talking about that's playing in Tulsa, he's actually had a really he's the captain of the team, and he's had a successful ECHL career. At 31, he's still making points. He's still, he's scored 20 goals this season so far, and so he's a good player in the league. He could probably, I bet you, if you were to put him alongside a young NHLer, he'd probably look, quite capable. But, it's obvious just, at that age and point in his career, he's not going to make it out of there. He played one game in the AHL. That's it.
Well, I guarantee you, once he reached the 3 or 4 year mark in that league, no scout was looking at him anyways, because why has this guy been down here for 3 years?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it would be curious to know his story. Maybe I will reach out and let's have him on the pod.
perfect.
Let's do it.
They usually, those ECHL guys have great stories. They're amazing to listen to. So
100%.
Oh yeah, I could do 2 full podcasts on the half a game I played in exhibition in the East Coast Hockey League.
How long are those podcasts?
We already covered it.
That's right. Yeah, you know what? It's been a fun night for the fact that, as I mentioned to Mike when we started, was we're running out of topics. running out of hockey topics. But when you can mesh the old with the new, which is what we did, it was probably harder to do this back in the year of the lockout than it is now, right? Like, at least now we're getting a lot of different hockey. We can consume hockey from, back in the 80s, 90s, and we can watch that. Have you been watching a lot of the rewind games, the classics, Bob?
Oh yeah, I love classic games. For a long time, I had back when the NHL Network used to show classic games all the time too.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Them and watch them. So
yeah.
So, and during the lockout, they were doing this thing too. So one of the highlights for me with this pause has been the classic games. I love old hockey games, and I'm talking stuff that's like from 2010 early on. Like anything after 2010 is too recent really to.
Did you pull out the old tube TV? You got the you got the old tube. Did you have one of those where it was basically a full cabinet of TV? You could put your plants on the top. Did you have one of those? I
did not. I had a 32-inch
projection
tube TV.
Oh, tube!
One of the first TVs I ever bought, and that thing was the heaviest beast in the world, and I carried that thing from move to move for 2 years before I ended up donating it.
Yeah, like, a TV that size now, if you can't carry it by yourself, you're in trouble. But pretty much almost any TV that was a family room TV back in the 80s was a 2-person job to move it, right? Like those were some heavy beasts. And there was like there were TV repairmen. They weren't just in porns. They were like real people, right? Like people that actually went out to fix tube TVs. Now you just drop them off at the Best Buy digital recycle and go and buy a new one for $400 or $500, right? No, I didn't. I'm sorry if Brett's mother is listening that I mentioned. I doubt. I think she only listens when Brett's on.
The older the game, the better. Like I was eating up this '67 Maple Leaf Canadian game. Like my hero Terry Sawchuk was playing there, and there's limited video on him. So I love it. I love that stuff.
Yeah, I've enjoyed that. I've enjoyed some of them. I that's a little bit too early for me. It's the quality of the video that degrades. Yeah, I have a hard time even with some of the '80s video when I look at that. It's like watching somebody on a bad, video camera. Bad web conference trying to get the. But I
got a question for you, Mike.
Yeah. Well, which one?
Are you
or Oilerslive?
Well, both. Yeah.
All right.
One I call Mike, and one I call Durza. You never hear that though because I'm never on the phone.
We don't want those kind of profanities on the show either. All right. What's your question?
Are you guys a believer that the greats would have been great in any era, or do you honestly believe that Rocket Richard only would have been great in the 50s? Gretzky only would have been great in the 80s, early 90s.
Do you want to take this first, Mike, or you want me to take him?
I'd love to.
Okay, you go for it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Are you giving Wayne a Titan Turbo stick to use now, or are you giving him a graphite stick and the guy skates now, and all the training that these
Nope.
guys go through, or are you just
Nope.
planting Wayne from back then into now? You know,
I'm
I
taking 1985 Wayne Gretzky, putting him in that 1957 series, playing with the same equipment they're playing with then.
yeah. I mean, if you're transplanting Wayne back to back to then, yeah, he's still going to be effective. If you put him in now, and his minor hockey career is the same as minor hockey career guys now, and he goes through the same training, that raw athletic, God-given talent that he has. I think part of what made Wayne great too is actually his dad. Walter would sit him down and okay, you watch Hockey Night in Canada and you chart where the puck is without looking. That kind of stuff is what made Wayne great. He could still do that today, and yeah, he would still be highly effective. I get a kick out of people that say, Grant Fuhr, if you put him in net now, bantam guys could score on him. There was a guy on Twitter last week that's what he was saying.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
I
no,
saw that.
sorry,
Yeah.
no, that ain't happening.
Well, so,
Yeah,
okay.
these guys are generational and timeless. Maurice Rocket Richard would still be a hell of a player in today's NHL. And I think he would scare the shit out of somebody even like Lucic. Like he was a physical presence, and that doesn't change. They're timeless. You take Connor McDavid and you put him back, he'd have to learn how to take more, abuse than he does now. Is he going to be effective? Yeah, yeah.
So my answer, yeah, is a lot like yours, Mike, and I think probably Bob agrees. The way I look at it, though, is quite simply this: is if you have somebody that is great in sport, it's almost like 25% talent and 75% mental. Like they are just at a different plane when it comes to being the best. It's like that little extra that they have times 10 that gets them to where they're at. Like if anybody tries to say that Connor McDavid is a natural talent, he's not. Like that guy works. He works that much harder at it to be the best. He's got talent and natural talent. He's full up on that 25%, but that 75% is all mental. And to I think suggest otherwise is to not have met any real true talents, right? Like
A part of
anytime
it
that
too is a part of it too is their drive and just work ethic,
that's the
right?
whole mental part, right? Like if I've met some Hall of Fame talents among different sports, and they are just at a different level, right? Like one of the a story that I've told a lot of people. I went on a charity bike ride with a guy that was an Olympian, and he was when he was 18 and practicing for the Olympics, he got hit by a 2-ton truck and ended up paraplegic. And he didn't quit. He just didn't quit. He got back he got into a wheelchair. He ended up doing the Ironman. He's in the Ironman Hall of Fame as a paraplegic. He was the first person to swim the English Channel as a paraplegic. He's done all of that, and he's won in the Special Olympics. But then there's a doctor that went through and did this, taught this new procedure to him, where he was actually able to walk again. And so I went on this. It's a 180-mile bike ride, and I went on this bike ride with him, and we were going, on road bikes, at really good clip, right? And he's still an athlete, and he's my age actually. And so at every 15 miles there is a little bit of a rest break. Now I'm not much of a road biker. So I had, the saddle was killing me. My back was killing me because the, bike wasn't fit 100%. I never clipped in my life. I was in decent shape, and this was only a couple of years ago. And we'd done 100 miles, and then we were at about 115, 130 miles. And I was also I was riding beside him for most of it. And we got to this rest break, and we got off this rest break, and I was thinking about calling it quits, right? Like I was ready to pack it in. And so I was going to get a ride back, put my bike in the back of one of the trucks and get a ride back to the finish line. About I think it was about 65 miles early. And I get off my bike at the rest break to grab, a drink and a banana. And he's there with one of his friends is riding with us as well. He's riding, by the way, he's riding an able-bodied bike. So he's riding the same bike that I am, right? And his friend helps him get his leg off of the bike. And and he puts his, and he says, Michael, he says, do you mind if I hold on to you for a second? Because he's, he can't walk, right? And he says, how's the ride going? All I could think of is this. I'm like, well, his name's John. I was thinking, I was playing it in my head. I was thinking, John, my back really hurts, and my ass hurts, and I'm thinking about calling it quits. And then him turning around and saying, "Oh, well, that's all right, Michael, because I can't feel my fucking legs," right? Like, you know. And so as soon as he asked me that question, I just looked at him and
I
thought,
gotta keep going.
"Yeah, I got to keep going," and I felt great. But when I got back to the finish line and I had a chance, we're all sitting around and chatting after the ride, and I had a chance to talk to him. I just realized, like, this guy has a mental capacity that is beyond anybody I've ever met, right? Like, he just, he doesn't know the word quit. And so when you take a guy like Gretzky, or you take a guy like Gretzky, won that track and field race, right? Best of the best.
Yeah.
Connor McDavid, who I understand was a 90s student, right? Like a 90 average student, not just a hockey player, but like, a good student, right? Guys like Crosby, who, they're, Draisaitl, these guys, they don't leave the ice early, right? They're just not happy with being second. And so I think that if you take anybody, you drop them into any era, and that mental capacity, it will make them the best of what they are, right? And that's the biggest difference between, and when you get to the NHL at that level, each one of them have, a strong mental capacity to get there, but then it becomes, who's got the most drive, right? Ethan Bear's a good example, right? Like he's a talent that could play AHL or NHL. When he chose to take the mental, his mental game up a level, and chose to, work harder and do all the things he needed to do, he became a hell of a hockey player, right? And that's just the way it works. You could take all of the equipment out, doesn't matter, right? These guys are, they're elite for a reason, and it's all in their head, right? Like, because that's what they want to be. That's what they want to do. That's my long answer.
Yeah,
I say, yeah.
I 100% agree with both you guys. And this is why I listen to you guys, because we're on the same wavelength with a lot of things. But
Stepford
with Gretzky, would Gretzky have scored 200 points in 1960? No, because they didn't play that many games for him to get 200 points. But he still would have led the league in scoring, and same as Rocket would have been one of the leading goal scorers nowadays. They also would have been brought up in different times. You'd have different equipment, you'd have different training. So you watch a 1950s game now, it looks like beer league hockey. But at that time, it was the best hockey in the world. So no matter what era, they would be playing the best hockey in the world because they were the best players in the world at that time.
I think maybe one difference, Bob, might be that I think there are some guys that would be uh, maybe not make it in our era, in this era, right? Because I think it was a little bit. But I do think that the best of the best in any era translates to being. They would translate. You could drop them in anywhere, and they would still be the best of the best. But those guys on the fringe, those guys, that were smoking 2 packs a day. You'd never get away with that now, right? Like it's
but that's even just on a numbers basis.
Yeah.
Because number one.
Oh yeah,
there's
absolutely.
only 16.
Yeah.
So a lot of players that are playing now, no, there's no way they'd make it in the 6-team NHL.
Yeah. Oh yeah. 100%. And I think it just there's there just wasn't as much available as now. Like I think it's like golf, right? Like the difference between making the PGA and not making the PGA could be a stroke, right? Like on average through a season. And that's the way the NHL is now. The difference between an AHLer and an NHLer is quite minute, right? Except when it comes to some of the greats like McDavid and others, right? But yeah,
some things are a little bit relative.
But that's also not saying.
Because I sort of think like there was less teams, back then, but also there wasn't as big a player pool to draw from.
Yeah.
That's also not saying that they guys would have to change their games. Like Gretzky probably wouldn't have been able to play the same kind of game he played in the 80s that he would have had to play in the 60s. But that just goes back to saying the greats find a way to be great no matter what era. Because
for sure.
like even a guy like Jean Beliveau, who's noted as being one of the most gentlemanly players in the history of the game, he had to fight in the original 8-16.
Yeah, well,
get away with it.
That's exactly how I am. I'm, one of the more gentlemanly players out there. But if I had to, I would throw down. But gentlemanly, right, Mike? You've played against me a couple of times. Gentlemanly, I am like. I mean, that was my nickname, gentlemanly. What was your nickname, Bob?
Oh man, I had a few. Most of them were like along the lines of useless, or, and that was just for my family. But
yeah, well, yeah, and hockey nicknames are among the worst, right? Are they not? Mine was always Heebs.
They are
Heebs or Bear. Yeah. Yeah. They were not creative. I don't know. Maybe it's the Saskatchewan farm boy sort of thing coming out, but hockey nicknames are they're among the worst. We've got to do some ECHL podcast, maybe a podcast on hockey nicknames. We've got loads of topics, Mike. We can do.
Well, see, this is where I disagree with you, Mike, because you were saying you're running out of topics.
Yeah.
I don't believe that. I could talk about hockey, anything about hockey, for hours on end. So, in fact, I don't think your podcast is long enough. You could do it every day of the week if you wanted to. But
yeah, they might throw me out of my own
couldn't get me to
house.
shut up about hockey.
They'd throw me out of my own house if I did. He doesn't leave the room there. He just talks hockey all the time. Yeah, I'd run out of money pretty quick. I'd do it, though. I'd do it. It's good. It's like playing in the ACHL. How long is too long, Mike, before we call the podcast over? At some point at 2 a.m, we'll look at each other and say, I think I know why he's played hockey since he was 31. Right? Yeah. And we both have to work in the morning.
I think after 4 years there, that would probably do it for me. If I survived a season in the ACHL, I'd be fine.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I
per game.
yeah, if a guy plays one game of professional hockey. And so I get Bob's point. If you could play one game of professional hockey, right? Like you take it, right? You know, if you got that opportunity, take it. And then it becomes a bit of an addiction. I mean, hockey is an addiction for me now, right? Like I love the game. I can't help but think about this, being frankly, Tulsa doesn't enthuse me too much, and I'll probably have all sorts of people from Tulsa.
We just lost our Tulsa
Yeah, our
viewership.
Tulsa viewership is now down. And then there will be the cross Twitter rivalry that'll say, "Well, Edmonton's not so great either," right? Yeah. I love Tulsa. I love Tulsa. I would move there in an instant.
Nice save.
Yeah. Yeah, nice save. I don't know. I just don't think that I could do it till I was 31. If I was going to do something like that, and you're right though, Bob, about the wife and kids and stuff like that. Who knows, right? And who knows what this guy like? This guy might have a hell of an off season, right? You make a lot of good connections. I'll tell you that, right? Like
Yeah.
I guarantee you he knows a ton of NHLers, right? Even though he's not, right, played in the NHL.
Mhm.
He would have
Right.
played with guys that growing up and in the NCAA, and then the one game he played in the AHL, he'd make connections. He'd certainly have a lot of connections, a lot of good stories.
Mhm.
I'm not sure I could do it till I was 31.
That other guy that was on Reed's show, I mean, he sounded happy and content with his life. Like the team, he had a house. They bought a house, and the team, I think, put $2,500 a month towards his mortgage, and he, you know, and his pay was separate from that. It's not like he was getting rich. He said, when they weren't playing hockey, he was running hockey camps. So I mean, he was at the rink pretty much daily, doing his craft, but he seemed happy. So
I used to go to hockey camps that the Saskatoon Blades would put on every summer at the old arena in Saskatoon. And I wish that I remembered who it was, because it was always like the captain or the assistant, or it could have
that
been
ran.
NHLers. Maybe like I'd have to look. I had a lot of my family used to play in the Saskatchewan leagues, like in Melville and Melfort, and I had an uncle that played for the Blades, and my family all the my dad came from a family of 16, and there are a lot of boys in that family, and they were all good hockey players. And the one thing that held them all back, and we're talking mental capacity, they were all alcoholics. And so my
Mm.
uncle, who
Yeah.
played for the Blades, was a fantastic player, really good, really well known at the time, and actually had been invited to go try out with the Canucks, but wasn't drafted, and all because of the alcohol problem, right? Like he just didn't make it at that point. But would love to see. I wish I knew who it was from the Blades. I wish I remembered. I wouldn't be able to look. There'd be nothing on the internet from those times. Internet wasn't even created yet. That's what we're going to end this off at, Mike. Tonight we're at 10:30. Thursdays, no hockey, no problems. It's been a fun night. Bob, thanks for calling in. I was going to ask you if you wanted to be on the
This,
show today, but I had a busy day, so I didn't even get a chance to try to find a guest. And I knew Mike could carry the
I'll
show,
tell you
so
what,
I
Mike.
wasn't worried about
You,
it.
you can basically just assume that if you don't have a guest Thursday, I'm going to call in because I love this. Like I love talking hockey with guys that know about hockey and have a passion for it. So
He
to
was
me, it's
talking
just
about
closer
me
to
there,
sitting
Dursa.
around a table having a beer, talking hockey. So if you have no guest Thursday, chances are I'll call in and be a pain in the ass.
Well, I was thinking about this. Who coined the run the goalie Thursdays? Was that you, Mike?
Yeah,
Or was that you, Bob? Anyway,
no, I fed off the rip the ref.
yeah,
Run the
we
goal.
could. Oscar says thanks, guys. Oscar, thanks for tuning in. I think we could do start at 9:30 every week. We could do a run the goalie. You realize though that I'm going to have to make a introduction for it, and then again another introduction that Megathread Mike doesn't have, and eventually I'm going to have to give in and do a Megathread Monday intro. Oh man,
All my dreams are coming true.
this just sounds like a lot of work, guys. It's a ton of work. Wow.
All I've ever wanted is my own theme music.
All right, well, we'll figure it out. Yeah, Luchansky's got his
It's too
own.
bad you didn't have to pay like copyright or whatever to have like the Ultimate Warrior music for run the goalie. That would be perfect.
2 years ago, I had the licensing to play that live, but I realized nobody was really paying attention on the I had the internet radio where you could. So I was streaming it on the internet radio. I'd get I think about a half a dozen listeners on the internet radio when I'd stream live, but it wasn't worth it to pay it with all the sponsorship money that I get. Tulsa Oilers. This episode brought to you by the Tulsa Oilers. The tourism board
This
of
is now
Tulsa.
a Tulsa Oilers fan account.
The tourism board
Oilers
of
Live
Tulsa.
brought to you by the Oklahoma Department of Tourism.
That's right. That's right. Absolutely. Tornado Alley. All right, guys. This is the end of the show. Bob, any parting words?
No, I don't have that kind of wisdom. So no.
All right. Mr. Dursa, any last words? I get the final word, so you can say whatever the hell you want. I'm just going to supersede you.
I'll say, ladies and gentlemen, keep your sticks on the ice and keep reaching for the stars, and hopefully we get some puck back.
Wow. Pretty
That's
hard.
beautiful. It made me tear up.
Yeah, pretty hard to top that one, I'll tell you. All right, it's Michael here from Oilers Live. Thank you, everybody that tunes in either to the recorded pod or on the live stream. We'll see you again Monday at 8:30 p.m., where we do the first hour is Megathread Monday, and follow that up at 9:30 with Rip the Ref with Mr. Brett Luchansky. Everybody have a great night.